We're ready.
Good evening. Welcome to the Bowery Poetry Club. This is a special collaboration tonight between the SFC MFA program and Bowery Poetry. This is our Write in Brooklyn event for fall of 2020, and I'm so excited to introduce our speakers tonight. It's a discussion with faculty Jive Poetic and Mahogany Browne with the E at the end. So I just wanted to quickly say a couple things about our MFA program. We have a application deadline on December 1st for our January residency. So the SFC MFA program is housed right in downtown Brooklyn, and it's the only low residency program in New York City. So what that means is you can do 2 10-day sessions in person per year, in addition to distance mentorship with such distinguished faculty as Mahogany Browne, Jive Poetic. In fiction, we've hosted an impressive roster, including Jamel Brinkley and Booker Prize winner Marlon James. So if you have any interest in learning more about the program, we'll have more info for you at the end, but for now, I am ecstatic to be able to introduce Mahogany and Jive, who are going to take it from here. Can't wait.
Thank you, Theo. My name is Mahogany, and I will open with a long form poem before we bring Jive Poetic, another faculty member from SFC MFA's program and the FSC undergrad, if I'm correct. What I love about FSC's low residency program is that being there as a poetry faculty and facilitator, I'm able to introduce the different genres in which these poems can exist and live. So I'm going to share a full-length poem that will be published in September by Haymarket Books. And it's really an investigation that I was able to focus on for a full year about mass incarceration and the impact on women and children. So I'll just start. If my mother were ever convicted for her addiction, like my father, I wonder who I would be robbing now. The data from the Fragile Family Study says my kind of survival displays more behavioral problems and early juvenile delinquencies. I say, you right. I rode into the night with a pistol in my gray hoodie, spitting image of my father, his nickname akin to Boone, his red skin the only thing I remember, him towering over me, black hair, red bloodshot eyes, already running, already gone. This was the closest time I ever came to becoming a woman with a number for a name. It is easier than you think to lose yourself in search of country. Politicians with expensive silk ties, Q-taxes, pad pockets, sterilized would-be mothers, charge the district with the bill. Cue reality TV series, suggest art programs to settle the inmates, and wonder why humans climb the walls, trying to escape their own skin after the teaching artist is asked to stop bringing poems that encourage collective behavior. Marathon runs of Wentworth. I binge watched the Australian television show. After several weeks streaming, I found myself crying for a world which held my father and uncles and brother and cousins like a fist. Wentworth missed the room like smoke clouds, and I know TV is only TV to someone that ain't never been forced to look outside their own heartbreak before. What's a cliff dive to a Black man hustled by his own country? He earns 92 cents an hour and my tuition still ain't free. The woman behind the financial aid counter asked me what my father makes. I say, furniture for the dorms here. I say, grandfatherless children. I say, I don't know who he is. And no one prays for their babies. I enter the gates of a boys' prison, menacing the border of Bristol, England. The smell that refuses to leave my jean jacket 3 days later must resemble the air of Pelican Bay. I toss the jacket in the trash, privileged with the ability to push away the dilemma of a nation-induced disorder. Nation-induced disorder was the original name of this poem until I realized it is a worldwide condition fueled by capitalism. This global epidemic is rampant in Thailand, Australia, Mexico, Honduras, Brazil, Papua New Guinea, Ukraine, and Belize. This must be the sympathy. This must be the scent of apathy. This is still the closest I'll ever come to visiting my father. I remember death by its proximity to what I love the most. Yesterday, Nipsey Hussle was mowed down in front of his clothing store on Slauson and Crenshaw. The world rage, a forest of dying, like glaring of cats leveled their fangs into neighboring fur, or the gang of buffalo broadside beneath the Compton skyline, while a parade of elephants spared us the eulogies as they moved in silence when a cauldron of bats darkened every street to match the heat of a people, our young, romp-ilked otter uttered blessings to the bleak-faced crash as an ambush of tires scowled at the full drift of red blues. This is how we grieve. Candles and teddy bears and flowers and posters. Tears and prayer hands and wailing, fighting and swinging and singing and singing for the flawed men that search for redemption, for the men that remind us of home. Just minutes away in Inglewood, California, my uncle pulls his blue plastic folding chair under the nearest shaded tree in the yard. My uncle's youngest brother has been dead for years. He sits outside anyway. I wonder, can he still smell the Seeds Candy Factory 2 blocks away? Does he remember how sweet and satisfying it tasted after we pulled our change together for lollipops? Does he still wait for my gone uncle to visit? Is that what he's risking under the sun? I remember death. When my favorite cousin Andrew is murdered, a shotgun blast to the dome, I am in Sacramento preparing for my Little League softball finals. I play my positions, catcher or third base. I want to be pitcher. I want to deliver the strikeouts, but the daughter of the coach is much more consistent than I am. So I play my positions. I guard where I'm told. I never tag anyone out. We don't win the season. I decide I love the game, even if I never win. I decide I love the game, even if it never loves me back. I remember. When I return home, my mother is nowhere to be seen, but her smell is everywhere. I don't burden her with the bad news her child didn't win, but when I hear a gasp somewhere behind her closed door, I figure she knows what I know. I don't think twice of the telephone's plastic echo as it returns to its cradle in haste. Andrew, a teenager with a brilliant smile. Andrew, just out of jail. Andrew, my favorite cousin. Andrew, could erupt a room into confetti of joy. Andrew, a gunshot wound to the head. Andrew, bloody and dying in front of our cousin who screamed and cried and cradled his face in one hand, his other hand holding close her newborn son. When I hear her name at our family barbecue years later, after she's testified against the killers and lost her spirit to dance with friends, I make her a new world. I decide she must look like she's never held a dead boy before. Her mushroom hairstyle is asymmetric and perfect. Her eyes shine. And maybe, yes, maybe, she still smiles and drinks her sweet Pepsi. So if I can write, I do. If I can write, I do. If I can write, I do. Today, when the sky is forgiving enough and the smog pretends itself an heirloom of history, I am sky, dumb, cloud sick until still. There, in the corner of my smile is a poem waiting to be picked up, dusted off, and shined real good. But all I can muster is the strength to pull myself to the bathroom mirror and try to relocate my father's rage. Instead, I find you, silly poem, waiting to be seen, waiting to be. If I can write, I do. If I can write, I do. I can write, I can write, I do. The quietest time of the day is when I hold my breath, sit back and suck in my stomach, close my eyes into thin slices and whistle. The room is only a room, not judge and jury, not a system of impossible fractions. When I share this poem, shape the aftermath of a mudslide into something compact and ready to be carried into the world beyond the steel bars, I pretend my father is in the back of the room. Red, red baby. Of course, dear reader, you want to know what my father must have done to be locked up all my life. How many drugs did he sell? How many bodies did he leave without breath? None, none. Of course, dear reader, you cannot imagine a thief so spectacular, so magical in his sleight of hand that he left the world without a trace, or manslaughter, or abuse, or addiction. Of course, all of the above. Possibly a collage of victimless crimes? No, just the audacity to refuse a plea. Mercy. His nickname, Go. I wonder, as I am writing this in a time in which poets accuse each other of non-committal words like wonder, dear reader, if I may interject this placement of the word to simply acknowledge that the writer, narrator is still in search of an answer to the wonderment presented. But lean in, friend. Let me tell you what I know. The writer's father has been gone, 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 and so she fears she will never truly understand or know. Yes, this moment of unknowing is her, an attempt to completely level the obstructed field of vision. It is ultimately an example of how the writer imagines her father whole, and how the writer deconstructs the intention behind these daughter sans daddy-induced theories. I wonder if he would approve of my line breaks, how strategic I can be as I pass my father's carcass throughout the audience like an offering. Thank you.
All right. And thank you, Mahogany, for that reading. So we'll talk about it some obviously in our Q&A, but that was an intense and exciting work that, as always, that you create. So I'll share a couple of poems as well. My name is Jive Poetic, and here are the poems. Okay. This first one, I'll let it talk for itself. I won't do the intro. I'm trying to discipline myself not to do too many intros for poems. Just try to assume the position. The train came with a police officer on his gun. His weight shifts against the door. A flashback. The first time a service weapon was pulled in my face. The second time, it made me lay on the ground. The third time, it put my hands in the air. The fourth time, it pushed me against the wall. The fifth time, it told me it was just doing its job. The sixth time, it kicked my feet apart. The seventh time, it followed me home. The eighth time, it grabbed my shirt collar. Read the signs. It's illegal to move between cars. Read the signs. My body knows how a Klan rally a cop's gun feels at eye level the ninth time. The safety told the trigger, read the signs the 10th time. We all looked the same under the right racism the 11th time. The barrel cocked its head and told me it missed me. The 12th time, it said burning black bodies is a tradition it was raised on. The 13th time, it dared me to take a swing. The 14th time, I thought about it. The 15th time, I almost did it. The 16th time, there were no cameras. The 17th time, no phones, just covered badges. The 18th time, the 19th time, searching me for the broken laws it thought I was. The 20th time, I assumed the position without anything being said. All right, this next piece. Nobody gets harassed by the police in this next piece. All right, that's my transition to it. He lost his English on the way to Havana. I picked up Spanish, but it crumbles. Under the pressure at the table, after the lunch table, he finds a bed in the bottom of a beer bottle, runs from it, back to our family reunion. Our grandparents were cousins. Now they are dead. Conversations that can't be reintroduced in the moment because the translator is in the bathroom or walking back or far enough for me to see our native tongues are not indigenous to our bodies. They are proofs of purchase replicating on autopilot. They are auction block fugitives pledging allegiance to the branding iron. They are African voice boxes crushed into blood diamonds bought and sold on the plantation. No matter how far me and my cousin get, we still ain't free to meet. We can't even speak without a master of both present to translate our trademarks. All right. That poem was titled Trademarks. And it's about me meeting my cousin for the first time and not being able to speak to him. This next piece, I do this poem every certain times a year, right? I get excited to share this poem sometimes. Black History Month, I like doing it. Latinx History Month, I like to do it. Thanksgiving time, I like to do it. All right. Arawak woman. My fear is this warning may never reach from my throat to the alarm of your intuition, for we share no language to express the danger your people face. They are not safe. They will be ripped limbless. Their blood will run to stain you fearful, stain you motionless as the armadas come, soiled in deception, soiled in the stink of self-righteous. They will move, pulpit murder on breath. Vatican permission slipped in cells will bland you savage at sword point, plant flagpole in womb, scar accent mark on vocal cord, colonized child before birth. They will find pleasure in conquest, pleasure in possession, pleasure inside you they will take against will. Suspect tea in your tears, curry in your spine, gold in your skin will break flesh to confirm. Not care of your screams, care of mine, care of the villages they will burn, the dances they will condemn, the customs they will smoke out of fear. Mistake armadas for nothing holy. They carry firearm at fingertips, smuggle us in the hull of their ship. You will not be spared. They want to slave trade you. They want to cotton field you. They want a tobacco plantation. You keep them in your skepticism. Trust the mumble of your instincts. They predator. They predator. You pray, pray, pray behind every jungle trap set, every poison dart dip, blow into their path, every hex you can chant, curse, every spear into their chest, conjure whatever deities you need raised, whatever spirits you need run until fatigue come cramp, until collapse come hide, until broken wing crawl, until broken hip fly, fly, fly. Woman, they want to Latina you. They want a Caribbean me. They want to Western us into their second class native sister. We will not let them. We will not be their sugar cane, not be their molasses, not be their rum. We'll machete chop them first. We'll return our sons to the sun before we ever let our daughters grow into their cattle, before we ever let our breasts dry from foreign suckle. We will resist the cross of their blood, from the cross of their church to the church that they hate. Mistake our models for nothing holy. Disease and rats will come. Pain and shackle will come. Against culture of cruel we shall be. The Igbo with open warnings with the bloody on our backs. All right. And then I'm gonna do this last piece, which is older, but it's become one of my favorite pieces to do. I don't do it that much, but it kind of is one of my favorite pieces to do. I don't know if people even know that about this piece, but yeah. Rolling ocean, crashed between her toes, sand built the coastline. She tight roped yesterday to her back, facing tomorrow with the Panamanian sun set in the most black of her mouth, full of clumsy English, rickety on her Spanish tongue. Shuffling Caribbean accent marks inconspicuously. She blended in Jamaica, where Cuba gave her the sun she spoke clumsy to in Canada. West Indian camouflage her Panama. Invisible mistress of the skies, toggling West Indian syntax, translucent at the border in full masquerade. My grandmothers were dream catchers, hopscotching countries, jumping identity double dutch, watching greener shades of brown grass darken every time she landed behind the language barrier. She clutched yesterday's tongue under today's image, exercising her phonetics to flip acrobatic English easier for her. Foreign tongue was Spanish in Jamaica, Jamaican in Canada, Canadian in New York, reaching for citizenship, red taped out of range with immigration on her heels until her last breath evaporated. Above Los Angeles, as black as planned, her maple leaf colored children sifted, accent free, obscured behind Jamaica. Panama was blindfolded, monolingual, my tongue now rolls as rickety as her English did 3 countries before, one cold shoulder ago. Latin America recognized me no more than Jamaica did, call me American boy, under breath, over unbroken speech patterns lost in translation. I felt invisible, while visibly in neither command of enough Spanish nor patois to correct the secrets hiding her inside me, undetectable, even in death. She lives around the border of my eye, while I, tongues away from the language she learned to speak in the New York of my tongue 2 generations away, and I'm in the dark of this dance hall. Multiple Spanish reggae tones mocking the star-spangled portion of my red, black, and green footwork falling off of every drum beat chuckled at me, this collage of a woman, tildes between her locks and patois flowing from Latin roots. When she smiled me still. When she spoke me speechless and somehow made me homesick for a place I had never been. Boom. There go the poems. Thank you, SF. Thank you, St. Francis, Bowery.
Wow.
Everybody tuning in at home. Okay.
We have a couple of minutes. Let's really talk about your process, Jive. I listen to you speak and I hear Panama. I hear you do a lot of pieces about identity and lineage. Can you talk about how that has served you, informed you, and how you use that as a teaching model?
Okay, well, we're gonna do the same next to in the video. How are we gonna do it? You're gonna be, can they see you?
We're next to each other.
Okay, so the question is about lineage and how I use that in my work as a teaching model. Okay, well, I think Black people globally have been kind of robbed, not kind of, I don't even want to soften it, actually robbed of historical archives, historical stories, historical narratives, lineage, and all these things, like taken, like literally burned, destroyed, so that we'd always be walking around with this sense of alienation, always looking for roots and or finding them, and then finding people detaching us from them because we're not something enough, right? You know, you can go to Africa and they'd be like, well, you're African American. You can go to the West Indies and you'd be like, West Indies. And it's like we're always kind of disoriented. And I think like we have to try and figure out ways in which to ground ourselves in our stories. And I feel like maybe its first step is writing stories, writing poems, writing things that not only archive my own story, but inspire people to go right. Like, look, what's my family narrative? How far back does it go? How can I extend it? Who else knows the story? Who can add to it? And so I really do kind of think I owe it to the future, right? At least not the future of some grandiose, like I owe it to the population to tell but I think I owe it to at least the future of my family to know, like, when you search your history, I won't be the brick wall, right? Like, I think when they talk about lineage and diaspora and ancestry, I think Black people are always kind of worried about that, brick wall that they got one in the back. It's not metaphorical. I didn't plan that. But there's always kind of that worry of, well, what about when I get to that brick wall of slavery or the slave trade or something like that? At some point, that will be 1,000 years ago, right? And I want you to be able to find meat and find more and find more and find more, find back as far as unimaginable. And so I think it's important to write these family stories and narratives and counter narratives, like what would have happened if, like the poem about the Arawaks and the Igbo, like what would have happened if we could have communicated with each other? What would happen particularly if the women could have communicated with each other, right? Maybe they would have had to think, maybe the war strategies would have been proposed in a much different way. I don't know, but yeah, I think about that a lot, and I try to plant that into the work as much as possible. It's a long way to give you that answer. I'm sorry. I don't know.
No, it's a beautiful discovery. And how have you used that as a teaching model?
I lead with it in classrooms, right? Like I lead with it. I tell people immediately, like, listen, we're gonna write these poems, but the most important part of the poem in this case, because it's always different, is the story. Let's just tell the story first. We'll find the poetics in the story, right? So we write the story. Sometimes I'll tell, especially students who feel like they don't have a story. Students feel like they don't care sometimes. People don't care. Nobody want to hear that. I know, just tell a story that you always tell. Tell a story about your family. What's the funny family story you always tell? Because right now, that story is contemporary, you, a couple of relatives, but what about in 200 years? That story will be so valuable to know that, you had this cousin and he liked to go to this particular nightclub that's now gone because it's 200 years ago. You know, like those things, and then pictures and stories together. I think that is valuable. I know it's valuable to me when I find a picture and then I get a story behind it. I love it so much, which is scary about the technology that we have now, because there's going to be generations of people who might not have tangible pictures in the future because technology becomes obsolete so fast, and cybernetics crash all the time. It's like, I don't know if that's even the word, but you know, I think you know what I mean, right? Memories are so fragile now because we don't get to handle them ourselves, right? Archive ourselves, at least.
Yeah. You're right. There's so much of our world that is embedded in technology that if you should lose passport access to your Google, how that could be all of your photos. Yeah.
Your phone crash before you back everything
your
up.
Phone crash before you back it up. Word. Have you found that talking about migration and family, has that been an obstacle in itself? I find even this piece that I've been working on, it took me a lot of time to just come from the shadows and the shame of, you know, believing that mass incarceration was a me problem or a personal problem or an inheritance. You know, I didn't realize that until I really took time to sit with it, that it was a setup, and that there's so many folks that have lost their families to the prison industrial complex, that it isn't a, you know, there isn't one narrative. So coming to terms with that for me to even write that was a bit difficult. It took me, I think, years to even be honest about my father being in prison, and my shame, the shame that came with it for me, my sadness, and then shame, and how I just tried not to think about it or talk about it. And now that I'm wondering how many others have gone through that, you know, and listening to you talk about family and archive, there's always secrets there. You know, you're talking about migration in under this administration. That too is, you know, that could be a cause of some real anxiety. So I wonder how have you dealt with those things?
It's been very difficult for me. Well, I mean, 'cause I'm very sensitive to story. I mean, since I value stories so much, I'm very sensitive to them. And I'm also aware that it's never just my story I'm telling, right? If I'm telling a story about my family, I'm not just telling my story, I'm telling my entire family story. And when you're the child of an immigrant family, that puts everything in an even more precarious standing or situation or footing, right? It becomes more dangerous because I don't know what I'm exposing, and I don't know how that can be used against the family. You know, for a long time, if you look at like anything, early work, you know, a lot of it is comical, it's wordplay and witty, and it's like I enjoy that stuff, and I still really do value it. But in retrospect, I'm looking at it now and wondering if I was creating that work because that was the work that wouldn't bring danger to the family the most, right? Like I can do the centered in my own experience, wordplay and fun and witty stuff, and do that, and then not worry about my grandparents being deported, you know. And now I'm seeing it's even more crucial because while my accent is, I can toggle it, right? I can, you know, all intent purposes, my accent doesn't say this is the child of an immigrant, I don't think. And I realize I have family members who don't have that luxury, you know what I'm saying? And I mean, and that means a lot of people are in that same privileged position, which means we who have this US citizenship, this privilege of US citizenship, have to be sensitive to who's being affected by the current policy, the deportation, people being locked up at the border, babies being separated, because we're just one generation away from that. And then think about how we can lend our voices back to bring awareness, because I think some people feel like, you know, we hear on the news, babies are being locked up and deported to the border. And it's easy for us to say that's not really connected to what I'm experiencing. But then when you look at somebody and say, well, look, this person right here, right next to me, he's only one generation away from that, and his family could be. And so it was scary for me. It was a little bit risky for me. And I think now with this discussion of mass incarceration being in the forefront even more so, because it's always been a discussion, I think it's just more visible now. It requires us to think about like how many communities, adjacent communities, are all being targeted by this system. We're swallowing people. It's like, okay, you got African Americans, got smacked with 4 generations of crack, gangs, everything, heroin, infiltration, not housing, schooling, everything. And they're getting locked up, right? And then everybody looks like them and getting locked up. And then everybody who's participating are getting locked up. And everybody who's not, and then at the same machine is locking up everybody who might be an immigrant. And the same machine is locking up everybody who's doing a survival crime. You braiding hair without a license, you're gonna go, it's crazy. But we have to all do the work and talk from our unique perspectives to bring these stories together. But it's scary because it all puts us at risk too, right? It brings pain. Like, really, geopolitics is what divided my family in the first place, right? The political problems between the United States and Cuba means I couldn't meet a cousin who living there until Obama became president. I couldn't go to Panama until, whatever, and it's important for us to poke at these things. I'm realizing more and more it's bigger than my fear or my embarrassment too. You know what I mean? Because I remember when it wasn't cool to say that you was the child of an immigrant. You know what I mean? It wasn't, you get made fun of if you ain't go to a school with a bunch of West Indians or a bunch of Latinx people, which Latinx is a new description that people use. It wasn't when as far as I know, Afro-Cuban was the most people would say back in the day. So I don't know if that answered that, but you had to climb over it.
Yeah, no, you did answer that. I guess my final question is from Banu Kapil, who had the amazing book called Vertical Interrogation of Strangers, where she has 12 questions, open-ended questions. And she went around India interviewing women and then turned their answers into a book of poems or a fiction. It's considered fiction. So I think I would love to end this conversation, which is really a prompting for thinking of the beginning, the next stage, which is how will you live now? How will you write now? How will you live now? What is next for your work?
Wow, that's such a complex question. I mean, it seems like it's like, how will you live? I don't know. It's unprecedented time. Like we have a now former president in the office who's borderline refusing to leave. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's going to mean hostility and violence. I don't really want to see any more violence. You know what I mean? We have a pandemic that's literally killing people all of the time, every day. And my footing is so unstable right now. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, how will I live? I'm going to try to keep writing and keep supporting the voices around me. Try to keep documenting these moments, disciplining myself to write about the moment. Usually I don't like to write about the moments while I'm in them because I overthink things and then the writing never gets done. But I'm just going to just try and archive these moments and make it to the other side of it, and then hopefully I can construct that in a way that becomes sustainable for everybody. We all can live under it. You know what I mean?
Word. Thank you so much, Jive Poetic, professor, educator, organizer, curator, DJ. We see your equipment back there. Next time, maybe we can have a whole DJ set happen.
I'll do it.
Cool. And thank you to Theo Black-Ganji, the director of the SFC MFA program. His vision, his stewardship for this variety of voices coming into the space has been beyond exemplary. He is a fire starter, and I'm so glad to be on his squad. So thank y'all for being here. My name is Mahogany and Browne. What's your name?
Jive Poetic.
All right. And this was a conversation. We'll see you again. Writing Brooklyn, always doing something new. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.